Hello and welcome to our spring edition of Digital Photo Mentor Live, coming to you now at a new time and date, Wednesday. So, if you are joining us for the first time, as Trentman is, please let us know. He's joining us from Winnipeg. Sad for you. Sorry, I'm an Oilers fan. Joining us from Winnipeg for the first time, but we won't hold that against you. So, welcome. And let's see who else we've got in the house. Lee says it's not her first rodeo. Awesome. Not mine either. Byron, Colorado, welcome. Have you joined us before, Byron? Marguerite, Sault Ste. Marie, she's missed a couple. Well, we weren't on for a couple of weeks, Marguerite, so maybe you didn't miss any because we were away doing an Alaska cruise. Deb from Wisconsin, thank you. And David, now we are coming to you at a better time for Australia time, obviously, because it's what time where you are, David? It is 6 p.m. my time. So it must be morning there for you and for Everyday Church. Long lost attendee. Why are you Everyday Church? Stephanie, I got some of your images. Awesome. Our cruise was great. I'll give a sneak peek. I put a few in an email the other day. So if you saw those, I did some infrared in the totem poles. Alice in Guelph, John in Portland, Oregon, Port Orford, Port Orford, Oregon. My goodness, that's a mouthful. Julia in Maryland, Carol, Danelle, 10 a.m. for David. Okay, that's good. That's a good time. Mike in Oakville. And Ismail from Calgary. Mel from Calgary. Good morning from Adelaide. You're the long lost attendee, Linton. Welcome back. Okay. Well, glad to have everyone. I know Trish usually comes, but she is on tour with Ugo in Italy right now. So that's why we won't see Trish, because I got a message last night from Trish that she is in Italy. So we're going to be doing forests today. And as you may be able to tell from my attire, I am a hockey fan. And of course, I am cheering for my Oilers upside down. So if you're a hockey fan, let me know what team you're cheering for. We can still be friends, but I am Oilers strong going way back into the 80s. I've been a fan of the Oilers. Okay, so let me dig in here. I'm going to hop over to Lightroom where I have most of my images. And exciting thing for me is I've actually ordered a new iMac. So I'm going to be getting a bigger, faster computer. So hopefully we'll get rid of any of these lags that we've had in some of the lives that we've done previously. Okay, so this image of Stephanie's actually was the one that I used for the featured image that you saw a minute ago. So I edited this one to look like so. And I thought, okay, I'll show you guys, first of all, what I did to this one. And I may end up editing it slightly differently, but let's just take a look at the edits that I did on this one. Okay, so let me get over here. Right, I cropped it to just fit the proper format for YouTube to make the featured image. So I can undo the crop if I want to reset it. So I'll do that. Now let's take a look at the edit that I've done to it. Okay, so I usually edit the camera profile, and you get that into going into these little squares here, and I chose the landscape one. Okay, so usually Adobe gives you the Adobe color one as a default, right? And then you can see that the color is quite a bit different, right? I actually don't mind the Adobe color in this one, and I might shift it a little bit more that way, but the landscape one gives you a lot more vibrant color, okay? Especially in the greens and the blues. If we want to make it a little more subtle, we could actually just choose one of these other ones. Actually, the camera standard is nice as well, and a little bit less sort of that neon green that I'm trying to avoid most times, right? Where's Holly? She's going to talk about my neon puke, because I talk about that a lot. I need to get a sign that says that. Okay, then I did some adjustments here. Okay, so the white balance, If I go back to the original white balance, it changed it a little bit. So I warmed it up a little bit. I added a little bit of exposure, but mostly what I did here was I punched up the shadows because you could see that, especially on this side over here, it was quite dark. So I wanted to have a little more detail on this right-hand side. So I used the shadows to do that, right? And I probably did my shift double click trick. I'll just do it again just to see what happens. Yep. So I held the shift key down while I double click on the word white. Okay. So when I do that, it sets it to what's called the endpoint. Yep. Oh, black moved a little bit. Okay. So I don't want that much black because I had too much black to begin with. Okay. So white stayed where it was. So I've got a little bit of white clipping on the waterfall there. And what I'm holding to get that view is I'm clicking on the slider itself and then holding the Alt Option key down. That will show you what is clipping. Okay. So if I do the same on highlights, I could actually just bring the highlights down until it's not clipping anymore. And now the whole thing just looks like it's gotten overall a bit dark. So that's why I brought the exposure back up again. Okay. So you have to be careful of, okay, I'm adding white and then lowering the highlights. So it intends for all intents and purposes, I'm increasing the contrast by increasing whites and decreasing the blacks. And then I'm decreasing the contrast with these two sliders. Okay, so they kind of counter each other out. So if we look at the before and after, right, you can see what's happening there. Let's see, did I do a tone curve? No. Did you do anything in here? No, but I could. Okay, so this is one that I often will use in the color mixer. So it used to be called HSL. If you're looking for that panel in Lightroom, it's now called Color Mixer. And often what I'll do on a scene like this, which is a lot of green, I'll shift it. So I'll brighten the yellows and darken the greens just to change the tones. Okay, see what that's doing? And if I want to, I could also add some saturation to yellow. And you see how much yellow there is in the forest? We could give it a little more saturation. You have to be careful with green because you border on neon puke, so be careful with that one. And if I want to shift the hue or the tint of the color, I could actually make the yellows more green or more orange. So we could actually turn this into sort of a more fall scene. See that? See how shifting all of these hues changes the color completely. I'm just going to reset it by clicking the word hue, double clicking there. I am going to shift the green a little more yellow because I don't like these sort of neon blue greens. I like more of a ferny, army kind of green. So I'm going to shift it that way a little bit. And then I'm not so worried about saturating the greens like so. So you can see what that's doing. It's changing the color, making it warmer, but also punching out some of these lighter areas. Okay. I did not do color grading here, but again, I could. Oh, no, I did do color grading. I lied. All right. So on the highlights, I applied some green. I'm not sure why I want the highlights green, but let's just see. Okay, let's move it more towards blue. So it's really affecting the water. See what it's doing? Okay, so it's making the water more blue. Okay. And then under the shadows, it looks like I applied a little bit of cyan because I felt like the shadows were really red. So ever so slightly, just a little bit of tint. Okay, so opposite of red. Look at the color wheel, right? Opposite of red is this cyan color over here. So you can see what this tool, color grading, is doing. Okay. I'm going to turn this one down a little bit. You can also affect the luminance. Okay, so if I want to brighten the highlights even more, see how I can do that? But make sure you don't get into clipping. Okay, so you can turn the clipping warnings on with your J key. And if I want to brighten the shadows, darken the shadows, okay, or I can go into midtones and brighten the midtones as well. So remember, you don't have to adjust the color. You can just adjust the luminance too. Okay. So see what that tool is doing. Okay. Let's see. I didn't do anything in here. And I didn't do anything here. I did do a vignette. Okay. So there's an edge vignette. And the edge vignette is really important here because it's really darkening these corners down. One of the things that I recommend doing when you're looking at your image, we've talked about looking at them upside down in the past, is look at your corners, okay? Watch what happens if I turn this off. Okay? See how bright this upper right corner is right now and right above the waterfall? Now your eye goes directly to that waterfall, okay? Now, I think I did do some healing with some cloning, and I also did some masking. So let's take a look at the mask that I did. Okay, so what I did here was I applied a gradient to darken this half of the picture to bring it in line with this, because I felt like if I turn this off, okay, the left side of the picture was way too bright compared to the right. So I wanted to even it out a little bit. So I just did a gradient. I could actually take it a little farther this way. Okay, so I did a nice wide fade so you can't see a line, and it makes it much more even across the board here. Okay. Now I could go a step further and I could do like mask the water and so on. Like if I want to do select object and just paint over the water, let's see how well it selects the waterfall. That's not bad, right? Now I have the choice of, do I want to give it more texture? Let's zoom into the waterfall a bit. Do I want to give it more texture or make it more softer? Now keep in mind that let's say you photographed this and your shutter speed wasn't quite as long as you would have liked, and you want more of that milky, soft, sort of smooth water from a long exposure. Well, look at this. Texture down, maybe even clarity, and we'll just rename it. See what that's doing to the water? It's making it much softer. Okay. So her exposure on this one was a half a second, right? Which is pretty good to give you a nice soft waterfall. But if you want it even more, okay, no problem. Now I'm going to turn on the clipping warnings with my J key, and I'm going to brighten the whites a little bit here as well, and brighten the waterfall up a little bit. Because I want to make sure that it's giving me nice white. Okay, I'm using exposure as opposed to white because exposure brightens the midtones. Remember, it brightens up the grays, right? And I'm actually going to add some black and darken the shadows a bit. So when we look at this, it's giving a little bit more contrast behind the waterfall. I'm not a huge fan of minus clarity, but minus texture is doing a really nice job. Okay, I could rename this one darken left. And is there anything else I want to do here with a mask? No, I think I'm good. Now there's a few things that could be darkened, right? And that's where I actually use the cloning tool. So instead of masking and painting them in, I actually use the cloning tool. Right? If you could see this spot here, if I turn them off, see the bright spots? Okay, watch when I turn this off where the bright spots appear. Upper left corner, the rock in the water, the stick in the water, and then a couple of dark or a couple of bright bushes. So now I could do that again with this tree here. Okay, and I'll show you how I did that. So I just make a big wash over the bright area, okay? And it's going to try and replace it, okay, with content aware fill. So I think on the other ones I used the clone tool, okay? So the healing tool. So I'm going to switch it to healing, okay, first of all. And it's selecting from a dark area, which is good. And then I'm just going to dial the opacity down. So see 0 opacity, you can see the bright. And as I dial it down, right? I could probably move this to an even darker area like that, right? I just want darkness. So I'm literally cloning darkness over top, okay? See what that's doing? Minus, plus. So it's just darkening that area. Zoom out a little bit. Is there any other areas? This stick here, maybe? Okay, so let's do this one. Okay, now it's picking from up here, which is good because it's nice and dark. I'm going to go way up there. That's adding a bunch of green, so maybe I don't want so much green. Let's see what that's doing. I could try cloning instead. That looks better. So it's not trying to take the content from here. So cloning worked a little better on that one. Let me zoom all the way out. And then there's this little leaf over here. And same thing. I could just clone from a dark area. And the more opacity you give it, the more it clones that leaf out. Okay. I could do the same here. Let's give this one a little more darkness. So see how all of these cloning areas, right? I'm using the cloning tool, healing or cloning at a lower opacity. Okay, do I see some questions? All right. Let's see. Atlanta Braves. Well, that's not hockey, Danelle. It's hockey season up here in Canada. Just got a Mac Studio, still learning it, coming from Windows. Well, Stephanie, it's a learning curve for sure, but I think that you'll be happy with the switch. Great to see everybody. Yes, indeed. Wow, we got 38 people. This is awesome. Let's see. Mel says, trying to change to iMac. What is the right one these days? iMac 24 or Mac Mini? I went with the iMac 24-inch, Mel, because it has better processing power. The Mac Minis are pretty good. And honestly, I know a lot of photographers using the Mac Mini, so you probably be okay with that one. But I do a lot of video things like this, so I wanted extra processing power. So, I feel like my hat's crooked. You probably be okay with either, right? But what I recommend is max out everything. I'm getting the max amount of RAM, the biggest hard drive I can get, max everything. Okay. I sent out a package. Luminar sent out a package the other day with my 9 presets. My question is, can these 9 presets be purchased separately and previewed? Is it my portraits presets? Rob, if you could please share a link to that in the Skylum Marketplace. There are previews for them on the page. Yes. Are you finding that, Rob? Not your first time, long time student of the class. Awesome. There's a Luminar keyboard shortcut cheat sheet for you guys. Somebody asked for that. Please give this video a thumbs up. Catherine, good to see you. Okay, and to get back to this one, Stephanie's image, and she says, great use of the cloning tool. I'll have to remember that for future. Lee says, could you lower the luminance of the bright spots instead of cloning? No, because yes and no. Yes and no. Let me go back there. You can't do, oh, no, I've got to update my masks. You can't do luminance as a mask overall in Lightroom. So that's the tricky part. Now with Luminar, they do have the luminosity masking. Lightroom kind of does. So if I want to create a luminance range, for example, I could say, okay, I want all the bright areas, right? But that's going to give me the waterfall, which I don't want. So then I could say, well, let's intersect it with also a color range. So I want the green, right? So now it's giving me the brightest areas, right? in green. So I could intersect to say, yes, I only want super bright areas that are green, right? And then if I adjust, see, it didn't get that bright spot there either, right? So I'd have to play with that a little bit because I want to get, there we go. That's a better color range. Okay. So see how I had to play with the mix of color range. So once I get it, then I can turn the highlights down. Okay. So you can get it. It's just a little bit trickier and it's kind of hit and miss, right? And from here, if I wanted to adjust the mask, then I end up doing a lot of painting and saying, okay, no, I don't want it on here, and so on. So I actually found it easier to do the cloning. Okay. Good question. Danelle, yes. In regards to buying a new computer, that's exactly why I max everything, is to future proof it. Absolutely. Because now with the Macs, they solder everything in. So your RAM is set. You can't change it, things like that. Marguerite says she didn't know the added use for the cloning tool. It come in handy for outdoor images. Yeah, because you could just dial the opacity down. So let's take a look at this image before and after. And I see another question about doing a Luminar tutorial. So there's the original image, and there's where we are now. Okay, so the tones are much evener. We've gotten rid of those bits. So when you're thinking about editing, especially natural photos like this, you really want to use your editing to control where the eye goes. Okay, so is that Mike? Yes, Mike said, are we doing a demo in Luminar? Yes, I will do that. Absolutely. As Rob is indicating, I do the demonstration using the person who submitted the image, their preferred software. And this one was submitted by Stephanie, and it was awesome. So I used it as the feature image. Okay, so I do have a few that were submitted previously. Is Marty in the house? I haven't seen Marty. I haven't seen Holly in a while. Holly's been AWOL. Okay, so these ones were submitted. Let's do a vote. I've got sort of 3 different ones that I could work on in Luminar here. Which one would you like me to edit? So in the chat, put number 1 if you want this little statue guy. Number 2 if you want the log, and number 3 if you want the bright leaves. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. And I will do one of these in Luminar. We got a couple of 1s and 2s and a 3. Oh, lots of 1s. 1. Looks like more 1s so far. Some 2s. Oh, Sheila, I've got your images too. Sheila Greens. Okay, let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks like I gotta count my screen. You guys are voting too fast. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 number 1s. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I think number 1. Okay, so number 1, probably because it's just a really interesting subject. So I'm going to hop over here because I've got these images already in Luminar. And now I just have to find that one. There it is. So for those of you that are new, if it's your first time here, these are all images that were previously submitted by people like yourself watching. Okay, so this is Holly's image, and she submitted this one quite a while ago. So I keep them on file. And if I don't get to all the images in the forest category, we have another one. Like we've done forests previously before. So Rob is putting in the chat a link to information on where you can submit your images and how to go about doing that. And we also need to pick a topic for next week. So put some ideas in the chat while we're starting to work on this image, and Rob's going to sort of collect your ideas as to what kinds of images, a theme for next week. What would you like me to work on? If you have some images of a particular style, perhaps how many people saw the aurora? Let me come back to that for a second. No, we're not doing skateboarding. Rob. No, 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 no. We're not doing skateboarding. That's a little bit too narrow of a topic. Let me go back here because I wanted to show you these images that I did recently. So we did see the aurora in Alaska, right? And unfortunately, it was actually better back home. So this was off the back of the ship. So I did a longish exposure. It was about a 5-second exposure. This is ISO 800, f4 at 5 seconds at a 10 mil lens. So it was my Fuji 10 to 24, and I got some of the aurora captured, the blue sky. You can see the stars here in the sky and the water motion of the back of the ship, so the wake of the ship. This one was sort of off the corner of the ship, and I thought it was interesting just to give a perspective of, hey, I'm not on land taking this photo, right? Oh, no aurora for you, sad face. Indeed, sad face. Oh, you only had your iPhone. That's fine, if you want. Deb said it was cloudy. Yeah, I mean, we were just leaving Ketchikan, I think, Deb. And we got some the first night. There was 2 nights where it really kind of played, and back in Alberta, it was actually much more stunning. So, anyways, keep voting. If you want to see aurora edits, I can do aurora edits. And even if you don't have any auroras, I can work on some of mine because I've got some aurora images. Okay, so let's get started on Holly's image. All right, so as usual, I'm just going to make sure I haven't done any edits to this one. No, I haven't. Okay, so I'm going to start with develop raw. So in Luminar, you can start one of 2 ways. You can either start with a preset, right, or you can just jump right in. Okay, so let's do both. Okay, so if we decide to go for a preset, Luminar gives us some collections at the top here that it recommends that it thinks might go well on this kind of image. And as you notice, it's recommending scenery, right? And it's pretty spot on because, well, it's a scenic image. So you can just hover your mouse over like this and see if any of these are what you're looking for. This one really punches up like the texture and the contrast, and that might be good because it's doing a nice thing to the sculpture, and I could just go in and mask it and tweak it a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to keep this one in mind. Let's take a look at one more. Okay, then it thinks urban. Let's look at Savannah. Okay, so urban probably just adds a lot of crunchiness as well. Mike, to answer your question, I want the originals, please. There's an option for submitting 2 images on the form. So you can submit your original raw and your edited one. So if you want to show me how you edited it, then I can demonstrate what I would do, and then we can compare our edits. And that's, I've had people do that before, but I definitely want your original raw, preferably. Wait, let's see what these look like. So that one's really red, blue. I don't think black and white because that guy doesn't stand out at all. I still think the one that I saw, the first one, looked the best. Let's see if there's anything under easy landscapes. Now you'll notice that it takes a moment for these presets, the previews, to load. Okay, so I'm kind of just talking while that happens. The fewer you have in a collection, the quicker it takes to load. Okay. That's brightening up the greens real nice. I still think that first one. Yeah, I'm going to go back to the one that it had under scenery and go with clear skies. Okay, so now once I've applied it, right, I can choose to dial it back if I want. But I'm going to leave it at 100%. And then I'm just going to go over to edit and review what has been done by the preset. Okay, so to do that, I'm hopping over to edits. And I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom to develop raw, right? So it doesn't look like it actually did anything here. So I'm going to just take a look and see if any of these presets do a better job. So once again, right, look at landscape. Okay, it gives us that neon sort of green, but we can fix that. I kind of like camera faithful. So I'm going to go with faithful. And now, do I want to increase the exposure? Let's press the J key to see if we're getting anything clipping. Okay, I want to keep those highlights down a little bit. See the shoulder of this guy here is in the sun. I could do some tonal control on him separately. Okay, and I want to make sure I'm not lowering the contrast too much. We can also shift the color here. This is the only place you're going to get a white balance adjustment. So somewhere in here, we can add a little bit of base sharpness. And we can also make sure that there's no chromatic aberration. Now, if you want to check for chromatic aberration, it's going to usually appear in the corners. It's going to be really hard to see on this one because it usually shows up as a green or a red fringe. Right? So I'm happy with that. Now I'm just going to move up the scale here. So the next one up is structure. Okay, so you can see that it's applied a 35 structure, but I don't want it on everything. I certainly don't want it on these things in the foreground. So I'm going to use some of the new masking tools, and I'm going to do object select. Right? So Mask AI previously was really good at selecting certain kinds of things, right? But not necessarily objects that weren't one of the items that it could find. For example, it could find transportation, it could find sky, it could find water, but it couldn't find an animal, for example, right? Or a subject like this. So as I'm hovering over these things, see how it's highlighting them in red. So I can add structure just to the bits that I want. Okay. So I'm doing the rocks and stuff around him. Okay. And if it's missed any bits, or if I want to get rid of this bit, if I do this one, yeah, it's going to get rid of the whole thing around him. So I'm going to go with a brush just to refine it. And I can just erase from the part that I don't want it on, which is in here. Okay. And I can also paint in any parts that it missed among the rocks and in here. My initial object select got me really close, and it did a nice job of finding the edge as well. Okay. So now, before I leave here, I'm going to copy this mask. So you can see that it's only affecting this guy, and I'm going to take it farther as well. Okay. Then let's see what the next one is doing. Okay, enhance AI. Again, I don't want it on the edges of the image because it's brightening everything. So I'm going to lower this. And in this case, I'm actually going to use a radial gradient. Okay, so I only want this applying to the middle of the image. So it's not going to do it on the outside. Okay. So again, it's only punching up the middle. Color. Let's see. What is it doing here? Is it doing anything? Okay, so it's lowered the saturation of greens. We can actually increase orange because that's going to bring our little wood guy out a little more. Okay, orange and red. It's increasing details. Okay, so once again, let's take this to an extreme. So if I want to really sharpen and bring out the details in the little guy, all I have to do is paste that same mask in. Okay, so now it's only affecting him. Okay, so if I zoom in, it kind of looks like C-3PO, doesn't he? See how these sharpening and these details? Look at the wood. Okay, so I'm bringing out details in him without bringing out details in the background. Okay, so make your mask once, spend some time doing it, and then you don't have to do it again. Now, super contrast was added here, and I'm not sure why because it's not doing anything, but I'm going to increase the highlights, and then it allows you to control the brightness and the darkness of the highlights. See that? I'm also going to do another one where I can adjust the color, and that is color harmony. That's one of my favorites. You can see that I've added it to my favorites. So I use this color contrast slider a lot. Okay, so let's say, for example, if I want to brighten the greens, I can go here. Okay, if I want to darken, ooh, that's actually kind of nice. Okay, I can also shift things more green or yellow, shift the cool colors. That's kind of doing some nice things. I definitely want a vignette on here. So like I did earlier, okay, we need to darken the edges, and we haven't even talked about cropping yet. So we can talk about a little bit of cropping here. So let's take a look at the vignette. So what I do is I bring the amount down really far and the feather down to 0. And then I can adjust the shape and the size of the vignette and the placement because I want it just on him. Okay, once I get it where I want it, because it's darker and it's got a hard edge, I can see it better. Then I turn the feather back up and adjust the amount. Okay, so it's darkening those edges real nice. I still feel like overall the whole thing is too contrasty and too sort of overly saturated, but we'll come back to that one in a second. So let's think about a crop. So what do we notice here about cropping? Let's see. Any questions about this one? Okay, still getting suggestions. What do we know about cropping? So if we go and look at this one, the thing that bothers me here is this tree. Okay, so this tree here and this tree kind of are in front of him. So is there a way I can crop this to minimize that? Let's see what Luminar Neo thinks is a good crop. So using the composition AI, often it will crop in, and then I find that I just need to reposition the crop. Now that's not too bad, and that's kind of along the lines of what I was thinking. I want to get rid of this little light thing at the bottom, so I'm going to crop it out. But I'm going to go freeform and come right into this tree here. Okay, so I'm going to go almost more of a square, and he's then off center. So now it plays nicely into the rule of thirds, okay, because he's over here. And the other thing I don't like is this sign in the background. Okay, so we could try and use the erase tool to get rid of it, or I could use the cloning tool like I did in Lightroom. So let's use the cloning tool. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here, and I'm going to get strength like 40 or so. Okay, so I'm going to clone from here down into here. Okay, so it should come in so you can see it's getting greener, right? I want to go right from this dark area. Might have to go stronger. Oh, there we go. Took a second for it to come in. Okay, so see how it's sort of taking over, right? If I clone from here down, I can get more of the bark texture. So I didn't need to use the eraser. I just want to minimize the appearance of that sign. Okay, it takes a minute for it to catch up. So I don't want to go too crazy here. There we go. Oops. There we go. I'm using the wrong button. So to reposition the source from where I'm cloning, I'm using the Option key. So Alt Option. Is it a perfect clone? No, but the sign's gone. See that? Okay, now I want to deal with that color because it is kind of a little bit too much. So what I want to do is use the color tool again, or we could go in and do a LUT. Where's my LUT? Okay, so that is the mood tool. I love using LUTs because it gives that cinematic feeling. And I already have one in mind. Okay, so if I go into the creative ones, these are all part of Luminar. Sepia is one that I use actually quite a bit. Or these ones at the bottom are kind of my favorites. I like wooden, and in this case, kind of appropriate, right? Ushuaia, tritone, smoky, and sepia. These are kind of my favorites, but I like what wooden is doing here. So it's kind of making the blacks really matte. See that? But I only have to go a little ways. And it's doing a nice job sort of toning that obnoxious color down. And then I'm going to use Mystical, which is one of my favorites, to give it that glow again. It's a little bit of a glow. Like so. Okay, so there's our before and after. Now, if you want to intensify your image, just make a layer duplicate, so D on the keyboard, and then change your blend mode to multiply, and it's going to darken everything. It takes a minute to kind of pop in, right? It's going to darken everything. Give it a second. There we go. And then I can just apply the opacity and mask it in if I want. Okay? So if I want this only on the background, not on him, I just have to erase it from him. And that spot that's super bright, I can actually leave that one so it darkens it a bit. Okay, so there is what that layer is doing. So we can really spotlight him. Okay, so there's our before. Notice the sign in the background and after. Now, if we compare that one to the original in Lightroom, okay, see the difference? Right? So the cropping made a huge difference here, because if I didn't crop it, I wanted to deal with retouching or cloning or darkening this whole section and possibly even removing this tree. So that's another way to go, right? If you wanted to remove the tree, you could certainly try it and see if like any of the AI tools do a good job. But the way that I've cropped to the edge of it, it's now just a frame to bring us in closer to our sculpture. The highlight on the shoulder is pretty distracting. Let me see if I can do something with that. Okay, so I'm just going to hide this layer for a moment and go back to the original layer. So we could try dodging and burning. I'm not a fan of the dodging and burning tool. I find that it kind of does some odd things. So let's just try dodging and burning first. Usually turn the strengths down to less than 15. I usually go about 10 to 12, and you want to build it in slowly. Yeah, the highlight on his head too, like up here. Right, so I'm just doing a little bit at a time, and I'm changing the size of the brush. I don't know if there's any detail to pick up here at all. Right, I could try a clone as well to pick up some of the texture. Yeah, because the original, I don't know if there's any detail there at all. I can also come back to any of the previous edits, right? Remember the first one, the first develop. Do I have detail there? No, I'm losing it a little bit. So I could bring this back down. Okay. There is detail there. Okay. So there is detail. Let's just check each step. So if somewhere along the way you add something and it affects one area, you kind of just have to go back through your edits Okay, so look at this. Details is actually done something strange there. So I'm going to dial that back a little bit. Dial that back a little bit. Dial that one back a little bit. Let's see. See, I knew I was going to need my cough drop. Cloning. I'm just looking at that area as I'm coming back through. Sometimes mystical can actually do some bad things. Okay, so that's not bad. Let's try cloning. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to clone at about 30%, and I'm just going to clone from here over. Okay, so I'm going to clone from here to see if I can just get some. Yeah, see, it starts to add that not good thing. Okay, so let's get a smaller brush. I'm going to go from here. Okay, can you see what I'm doing? If I zoom in here, so there is my source, and I'm going to clone over to here. Okay, so I'm literally painting in some detail, or attempting to paint in some detail. See, I went too far there, because now I've got the bottom of that. See that? So now I got to fix that. I got that line showing up, so I don't want that line. Okay, so I can also go from down here and say, okay, I want some detail. Now you gotta be really careful of your source. Let's go. Yeah, I just want a neutral one. Let's go here again. So I'm kind of watching every time I redo the section. It's making a little bit of a mess. See that? And then I got to start again over here. It's picking up some odd textures. You can do a better job with this kind of thing in Photoshop for sure, but you can make it work. How's that? Is that better? There we go. That looks better. Do that. And now if I turn this one on, there we go. Better. So use all of the tools at your disposal, okay, including ones that you may not have considered. Okay. All right. Let's go back to Lightroom. And let's see. Okay. Okay, so Sheila's here. Okay, so Sheila sent in this one with a fun story. So I want to read this one because she sent in this story with it. So she said, I took the first picture to show the play of the light and the shadow in the forest. But then I saw there was a little yellow plastic doggy poop bag in the picture at the foot of the tree. And I realized that that was the story, the poop in the middle of the forest. So I wanted to emphasize that story. Okay, so the challenge here is that the poop bag is sort of in this shadow. Can you guys see there's the baggie right there. Okay, so somebody left their dog's baggie there. Not cool, right? Rob, is the chat working? Because we haven't had a chat in about 4 minutes. So I'm just wondering, could somebody type something in the chat just to make sure It's still working? Are you all awake? Have you gone to sleep? Can't post comments. Okay. Hi. Danelle says hi. Okay, perfect. All right. So not sleeping. So how to bring the story out of that? That one's going to be tricky, Sheila, because there is so much light and shadow, and the fact that the baggie is really small here, it's going to be hard to sort of bring that out. The shadow of this tree obscuring it, plus your shadow, I do think that the shadows are really cool, and you can actually make something really neat here. So let me just go a different direction with it. Um, Definitely, um if you could go back and photograph it again. Oh my goodness, it's worse when people hang it in the tree. Oh, why would somebody do that? Ugh, so gross. We live on a corner lot and we'll literally watch people go by with their dog and not pick up their poop. So annoying. So I'm going to go a different way with this one. I'm actually going to turn it black and white because it's so high contrast. I think it just lends itself really well to playing with this idea. Okay. And I may even take this one into Luminar just to show you what's possible there. And I know that you work with, what's it, you work with on one. So you should have similar tools in on one. Okay. So highlights, look at the difference here. Okay, so we can bring the highlights down, but in this case, I'm actually going to punch the contrast even more. Okay, I'm going to punch the clarity. So we've got lots of detail and the texture. Okay, so if we come in, there's lots of detail, little bit of stuff clipping there on the highlights. Let's bring it down just a little bit, like so. So I'm really emphasizing the contrast. I'm going to add my vignette, and that's a preset that I have made myself. That's part of our preset pack. Okay. Actually, I'm going to bring the texture down a little bit, like so. Okay. Now we've got some nice contrast. Going from that to that, it kind of becomes almost a self-portrait, right, of you, Sheila. So where I want to go with this one, we can adjust the tones in here, but I don't think there's a lot to do. There's a blue sky back in the background there. So if I want to darken that area, see how that's blue? So I could actually darken that. Let's see what happens with green. There's actually not, surprisingly, a lot of green. There's a lot of yellow. See that? And that actually brings those trees down. But I don't want to minimize that too much. And then there's the orange, right? So really kind of play with these colors. I like that red is bringing out, when I increase the red, see how it's just kind of picking up some details in here. So that's kind of neat. So let's see what the black and white mix is doing. Give us a little more texture here. Darken that. Because if I want that top corner minimized, look at that. Take the blue down. And if you've forgotten what color was in the original, right, you can just do the before and after on your full image, and you'll see the color. So that's the backslash key. Right? So now I'm going to take this one from here directly into Luminar Neo. I could go through Photoshop if I want to maintain non-destructive editing, but in the essence of time, and I just want to do a blur on it, doing one thing on it, a blur. Okay. I'm just going to go direct. Okay. Okay, Janelle says, I saw another photographer's images earlier today where he brought the color way down to emphasize the tonal contrast. How about something like that? Mostly black and white with subtle yellows and browns. Yes, we could. Lindsay says it's tilting a little bit. Yeah, that's possible. Yeah, it could be a tilt. But we're gonna go abstract on this version, so it may not matter in a second, Linton. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go straight to the blur tool, which is one of the new ones. And I'm going to go to motion because this one really works well with sort of that up and down motion. Okay, so you see how is that going up and down? I think so. I think that's up and down. I'm going to apply it and I'm going to mask out a couple of things. So I'm just going to mask out with a brush the shadow here. So like that. So we get to decide if we're doing this, right? I could also switch it over to twisted if I want to do that. That's kind of neat, actually. Right. So the 45-degree twist kind of goes from a point and you end up with a spiral. So that one's kind of neat if you want to do a spiral twist. Right. Tilt shift gives you sort of the edge blurs, which is also kind of cool. So we could do something like that. Ooh, that's kind of neat, actually. And maybe I don't even need this mask. Put it back. So the tilt shift is actually kind of neat. Let's see. I'm going to narrow it a little bit. I really want the fade. So I want this shadow here. Let's go something like that. Okay. That's kind of neat. All right. Now, if I want to do the blur up here, I can do tilt shift again and then place it so that it goes the other way. Right. And then just place the blur like that. So now I'm blurring that corner. Okay, so we can go something a little bit more abstract and spooky. Right? I kind of like it. Okay, so you can have some fun doing some blurs and just playing around. Okay? You can also just do a Gaussian blur and paint it in where you want it. I do kind of like these motion blurs though. I'm just going to paint it into this middle section here. Okay, so just another idea of what you can do with it. Because when I saw this image, I was like, okay, the drama of the contrast and the shadows, to me, you could create something really cool and spooky. And once again, if we do a duplicate layer, right, D on the keyboard, multiply. Oh, that one went fast. Look at that. Now we're super spooky. See that? I like it. I like it. I like it a lot. And then just click apply and it will come back into Lightroom. Sheila says she likes the ghost, likes being the ghost in the forest. Maybe a crop off the top as well. Lee says, yeah, we could certainly do that. Okay. A crop here, actually, if I come in, let's keep the aspect ratio, come in a little bit from the top. And also I'm coming in on that side there, right? Because I like to have what I'm looking for on the edges is there's this little sliver of black here. So I'm looking for contrast, right? And I'm trying to minimize contrast in the background. So by getting rid of that black edge there, It's just fades out to the edge. It's the lightest area, and it minimizes the contrast on the edge, right? Because your eye goes to those four things again. Where's my little ticker tape? So the four things that grab your attention are at the bottom of your screen. Okay. So those are the things you want to avoid having in the background. So you want to minimize sharpness, contrast, color, and brightness in your background. Okay. There it is. Brightness, sharpness, color, and contrast. Okay, now you said you wanted to try it with partial color. So if I come back to the Lightroom version, okay, instead of going to black and white, let's just put it back to color, right? Now we could do partial color. Okay, so in order to do partial color, what you need to do is dial down the saturation and the vibrance. So usually what I'll do is I like to dial the saturation down and then put the vibrance up, right? I think this needs to be a little darker as well. The other thing that I like to do is to add some color grading into the shadows in the orange area. So see the colors up here on the orange, and give it a little bit of orange. See how that makes it look sort of more sepia? Maybe a little more yellow. Just give it a little bit of brown in the shadows. And you can also play with curves as well to add some color. So is that kind of what you had in mind? More of a faded color, right? We can also, like you mentioned, doing, where's my color mixer? There we go. You could also lower the saturation of oranges, for example. So we just have more yellow or green. Okay, so we get rid of the blue in the sky and we really focus on browns and greens. Is that kind of what you had in mind, Lee? So totally different direction. So there we go. Very different. There's your Halloween Facebook profile, Sheila. But you wouldn't know that it was created in the daytime, right? Could be nighttime. Let's do another one. And these ones are Lightroom ones, but I want to take one of them into Luminar because one of these is Denell. Let's do Denell's actually. This one here, because you've got the spotlight, I think this one will finish really nicely in Luminar. So let's do a rough edit here in Lightroom, right? You'll notice when I open this image, you'll see this little exclamation thing, or it looks like a lightning bolt up in the right corner here, and it means process version. Okay, so when you click it, it just means that this image is using an older Lightroom process version. Okay, so if you update it, all you're doing is you're updating this part down here. Okay. The other thing that can do is if you just start editing it and you choose, for example, one of your color profiles for your camera, it will automatically update that as well. Right? So that's what that means if you see the little lightning bolt. Okay, so I've now chosen camera landscape, and let's check our white balance. Let's just see about daylight, makes it a little warmer. I'm going to go even warmer yet. So we're going to go quite yellow. Okay. And let's just see, make sure we have some blacks. Add a little bit of clarity. I don't want to add too much clarity, although see what it does to the star? Look at the sun. Okay, so less clarity, you get sort of a blob sun. More clarity, you get this really specular kind of starburst. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit of clarity and texture overall. I'm going to add my medium vignette. Okay, so that's my preset. And then I'm just going to crop it because instead of trying to work on this thing on the bottom here, I'm literally just going to crop it a bit. So I did auto, but I don't think that's straight at all. Maybe it is. Hard to tell. But I'm just going to come in and get rid of that spot down there. right? Can you see what I mean about having a little sliver of something on the edge of the image? So that's what I'm trying to avoid. So I'm going to come in there as well. So I want the edge of the image clean. So either all light or all dark. Okay? And in terms of leaning, I think some of these trees are leaning. So it's hard to sort of decide, well, which one is straight and which one is crooked, because they lean towards the sun, right? Especially if it's on a hill. So there's the before and after. I'm not going to do a huge ton of stuff in here. I am going to go into the color mixer just to see if there's any blue in the sky. See, look at that. It doesn't look like it. Look at the original, right? But if I darken it, see how that blue comes out? Doesn't look like there's anything there, but there is. I'll do aqua as well, right? And now yellow. Okay, so the yellow is in the leaves and in the sun. Okay, so what if I want to darken the leaves but not the sun? Okay, that's where we'll end up with a mask using this tool. Okay, there's definitely green in that as well. So let's just go to a mask. Now you have to start something. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to use a radial gradient. Right. And then I got to go to the point color. So point color is the one that's been added. So you don't have HSL in here, but if I zoom in, okay, I can select this and say, okay, I want yellow. Make sure I get a nice color. Okay. So now I've selected yellow. I can choose visualize range. So anything that is showing in color right now is what's going to be affected by any of my edits, right? If I want less saturated, more saturated, I can adjust the color here. I can expand it, say, okay, I want more green as well. And that way I'm not getting the sun, right? So can you see what's being affected? And it's only within this area as well, okay? So now I'm going to say, okay, I want to darken. So I'm bringing those highlights down on the leaves a little bit. And I'm not getting these ones down here, so I'm going to move down a bit. There we go. So luminance, see that? See what it's affecting? So remember, it's only with inside this circle, only the colors that I've selected here, okay? Let's make it more green. I can increase the saturation. See that? There we go. So we're just giving this more color in the center, more green, right? Without affecting the sun. So this point color addition to Luminar in the masking area is great. So I'm just going to call this leaves darken. If you get a whole bunch of masks and you forget what they are, that's why renaming them is really great. It looks like there's either a falling leaf right there, or I'm not sure if that's a light bug from the sun, but I'm going to use a cloning thing to get rid of it. So I'm going to use content aware at 100%, and there it goes. So it works pretty darn good. I'm going to get rid of this blue bit here as well. Okay, so see how I'm just minimizing some of these things? Yeah, it looks like it's a flare. Okay, so it's a sun flare. Now, what if I wanted to get rid of the rainbow bit up here? Okay, I could do the same. So I could do another mask and just do a radial gradient up here. And say, okay, I just want to bring the saturation down, because now I'm getting rid of some of that color in there. I'm going to actually bring it all the way down because I don't want the rainbow. I'm going to bring it down. We could also shift it more yellow. More yellow. There we go. Okay, and then this is just starburst color. So I'm kind of just affecting that. Right now, remember I said if I want the starburst to show up more, I could do another one and add some clarity. Okay, so another radial gradient over the starburst. And let's just close some of these things up here. So we can add clarity. So you see how that makes the starburst sharper? Let me come up here. Okay, so minus clarity, it's sort of a blob. Plus clarity, you get the more well-defined streaks of light. And likewise with texture. Texture tends to make it look too grainy, though, I find. So I'm going to do increased clarity. We could also give it a bit more yellow. Okay, so this one is actually starburst color. This is starburst clarity. Starburst clarity. Okay, so see the difference? So blob of white, and we're making it more sun. Okay. Now, if I take this one to Luminar, we're going to have some fun because Luminar does some really cool things. I'm just going to lift the shadows a little bit here. There we go. All right. So now, again, I'm going to take this to Luminar. Ah, she says a leaf fell. Okay. The leaves were dropping. And I think there was a highlight there as well. Yeah, the rainbow flares are interesting. It also could mean that your lens is dirty. I've noticed that my flares look sort of a weird, like speckly, if your lens has water spots on it. Okay. And you're at f18, so f18 will give away any sort of flaws in if you have any spots on your sensor or on your lens. F18 will give them away. Okay. Okay, so the one I'm going to jump straight to here is in the new landscape section, and that is sun rays. Okay, so I'm going to drag this up, and even though there is already sun rays there, we can use this tool to enhance it. So I want to make sure it's right in the middle, okay? Because now I can make the rays warmer. I can make the sun warmer. And I can decide, okay, how many rays do we want? And let's see, okay, where's my... The other one that I like to use is the overall look. So by dialing it up, you sort of get a softer look. By dialing it down, it increases the intensity of the sun and darkens everything else. But look at how cool this is, okay? Because I'm going to bring this down here because I'll show you this in a minute. Because I have an idea of what I want to do here, okay? So I want long sun rays, not so much glow. And I'm just going to randomize because what I want to do is bring a sun ray. I want to try and bring a sun ray down there. Just going to increase the amount. Oh, see how that's getting there. I just need fewer rays, maybe. A little more rays. Okay, more rays matches the original better, so I'm going to go with that. And then I'm just going to kind of keep randomizing until I highlight that leaf down there. There we go. Can you see that? It's coming down here. Okay, so now I can just play with the amount. See how overall look? Bright, dark. Sun rays length. And I don't necessarily want it as much on the top. Okay, so we could even mask it. And I'm going to do it so that it kind of fades off towards the top. I don't know if that's going to work, but let's try it. See that? So it's not so much up as it is down. Look at the difference, right? So I'm going to lower the glow a bit. I don't want so much glow in the middle. But it's really adding to that original effect, okay? Now we've got more warmth. And then the only other thing I would add here is either mystical or Altward effect. So mystical, look what that does. Woo! I love it. Okay, so sun rays, enhancing what's already there, right? Look at that. Love it. Now I can see this little thing at the top here that's bugging me. So it's this white area. So I'm going to use the erase tool, and I'm just going to see how well it does to fill it in. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. I just want to fill it with some trees. Ha ha! Look at that. First try. Is there anything else? Maybe this one too. So I'm just looking for these little areas that are bright, that grab attention. And if I want to get rid of these rainbow guys over here, I could probably do that as well. But I don't mind it so much. In this spot. Right? And it does a really good job of content aware fill, right? So you don't have to go to any AI stuff, right? I saw another one. Okay, so see how these little bright spots? I could use the cloning tool there, or just use the erase tool, and it does a really good job here of just kind of filling it with something that's similar to its surroundings. See that? It does a really good job. I think this one, I just want to clone a little bit. Okay, so this one, I'm going to clone just from here, just to darken these a tiny little bit. And that's it. I could do this streak on the log if I want to darken this as well. So I'm still using this cloning tool. See how at 30%, it's just acting like burning. Okay. So there's the before and after. I think that's fantastic. Now this strip down here is bugging me. So I would either erase or clone out this. Okay, my zoom is going crazy on me. Probably clone. So let's do the same. Get a smaller one. I'm just going to clone from here over to here. Oops. See, I made a mistake. Turn my cloning down to about 30%, 25 to 30%. Now let's just go down the strip here. See that? So I made a mistake at 100%. And I fixed it. See how that just minimizes? See that white edge there? Okay. Just minimize this bright edge. And back to Lightroom we go. Check the back of the lens as well. And if you have a filter on, make sure you check the filter also. Okay. Especially if you have multiple filters. Sometimes if the filter's got dust in between, especially when you're at f18, you'll get something like that. Okay. I actually do it all the time, Janelle, where I get a little bit of a sun ray and then I work it, right, to add another one. I like it too. So let's take a look at the original. Okay, so I've done some edits, basic edits in Lightroom, right? So I'm going to make a virtual copy. And then I'm just going to reset it. Okay, so my mouse is going crazy. Come on, mouse. There we go. Okay, so this one is reset. Now, come on. We're in reverse order, okay? So the one on the left is the original, middle one is Lightroom, the right one is after Luminar. Should get myself off of there. There you go. Right? So left one is the finished Luminar edit. See the difference it made? Like it just added that goldenness to that sun glow and goldenness overall. And then we got really specific with, cropping out that bright spot. Look at the bright spot on this lower here. Okay. Your eye goes there. Your eye goes to this little spot on the leaf. And then your eye goes up to that bright spot up there besides the sun. Right. So then we've minimized it a little bit here. We've minimized it here. And then goes a little farther here. Okay. That's a great shot. Follow that edit to now, print it up, put it on your wall. All right. Any other questions? I think I have time for one more. Stephanie, if you want, I can do this one. She asked about how to make the glow on the trees come out more. Okay, so the warm glow. I've convinced her to use a double starburst. Awesome. Okay, so I think that's what you asked for on this one, right, Stephanie? How to best to bring out the golden light. Okay, so again, I'm going to start with the same thing I always do. Actually, we don't need that. Let's start with the landscape. Again, I find the landscape one not necessarily golden enough. Is almost a lot of red coming through here. So let's go standard. And I find that you can try changing the white balance. Okay, so cloudy or daylight, it's pretty red, right? So if you find that it's looking really red, take out magenta. Okay, because magenta, see that, is pink and it makes things look red. So I'm going to take out some magenta and I'm going to give it some more yellow. Well, we can also shift these colors, right? So if we want to shift them, we know where to do that. That's under color mixer. Okay, so we can shift. Okay. I'm going to shift the green or yellow. I'm going to shift the orange. I'm going to shift the red. There we go. Red, a little more orange. That's the one. Okay, let's go back to as shot here. And if you try auto white balance, you're going to find that it just wants to take the color out because the job of auto white balance is literally to neutralize the image. Okay. So often you'll find that you get the opposite of what you want there. So, and I think what I'm going to end up doing on this one is doing a lot in Luminar. So again, I want to go with yellow. So I want more sort of golden in the highlights. So all of the things you can do to bring out more gold, right? So there's the camera profile. Let's just list them out here. Okay. So there's the camera profile. There's the white balance itself, right? There's the color mixer, okay? So we can play with the hue and the saturation. There's color grading. And then there's also the curves tool and something else that people forget to use. Let me just switch over to my view here. Something else that people forget to use is this one at the bottom called calibration, okay? You'll notice that you've got shadows and then red, blue, red, green, and blue, right? So you can actually shift the tones here as well, right? So I can shift things more towards yellow, more towards orange, increase the saturation of these colors, right? So you can do a lot of color adjustment here in this calibration panel, and people forget about it. See how much more golden that looks? And that's just this one here. That looks pretty golden to me, right? So don't forget about that one, right? We can also play with the different colors of curves, right? So if we want more yellow, like so, let's go more yellow in the highlights, more blue in the shadows. And likewise, again, red. I don't know about red trees. Let's see how we're doing. So there's our before and after. Okay, so it is definitely looking more warm. I'm gonna add that dark edge vignette. And I haven't even adjusted any of these things. So let's take a look at where our whites and our blacks stand. Maybe let's bring this out a little bit. Because remember, if you want more intense color, lower the brightness, right? I find that all the white up on the trees at the top here is a little bit distracting. So I might come in a little bit. And this kind of the space in here bothers me as well. My eye goes to the beach down here. So I'm going to come in and let's just focus on, I might go freeform here. Let's just focus on the trees, right? Where is the focus? That's the other thing. So, okay, it's right here. So it's on, looks like it's on these prickly trees here. Okay, so I'm going to add some clarity, some texture. Okay, so there's several different ways of adding gold. Okay, now if I take it to Luminar, we could add a LUT, or if you want to take it to Photoshop, we could do the same thing. Okay, the only thing about going to Photoshop to apply a LUT is it doesn't give you previews like Luminar does. So I prefer actually using Luminar if I'm going to apply a LUT. Okay, so that gives you a few different methods, right? So again, just a review, camera profile, white balance. Remember to add black as well, because remember when there's no black, like look at how much more intense the colors are when we have black, right? So when there's not enough black, your colors are all going to be washed out. So make sure there's black. You can add color with the tone curve, the color mixer, the color grader, and calibration, right? And then if you want a LUT, you got to go to Luminar or to Photoshop. This one actually might be a neat one to do to lower the color. Again, I don't usually do this, but let's say we bring the color down on everything except like yellow. Okay, so look at what happens when I bring the reds down, right? So we're lowering the saturation on lots of these things. So let's do a little more yellow and orange, right? And less green, right? Maybe no green. So I'm not usually a fan of this kind of look, right? And we're getting some shifted colors because of some of the other things we've done. Like you can still see that there's green down in here because of some of the other adjustments we've done, but it's kind of looking neat, right? Definitely high contrast, right? This one, I think I would go to Luminar. Just because I love to finish things in Luminar with the mystical, or in this case, potentially a LUT, right? And there's also some additional color tools here that we don't have in Lightroom, right? So I lowered the saturation here, but this color harmony again is another one, right? That allows us to bring it that golden color, right? So more gold. Okay. It's brightening it a little too much, right? And then we can do color balance here. So we can add midtones, right? Again, more yellow. Maybe we want yellow in the shadows. That's interesting. Right. And the one I wanted to add was the mystical. Ooh, look at that. Actually, Orton effect might be kind of neat here. What if, ooh, this one might be cool. What if we do the blur with the motion, And we go up and down. Okay. And then we mask it in. So I'm going to clear the mask. Actually, I want to see where it is. So I'm going to, let's try object select actually. This might be neat. I haven't tried this one yet. I did this video. I did a video on this one about using the blur tool. Right. So if I just hover over this, so I want to subtract these trees. Look at, I can literally just select a tree. Oh, this is brilliant. I was trying to paint these trees in myself, like one by one, and it was getting too much. So yeah, that's brilliant. Wonder if I zoom in a little bit, if it will let me do just one tree. No. Okay, so that's pretty good though. And then if I can go with the brush and erase, I can just get the bottoms of these trees like that. Just get the bottom here. This is going to be cool. So it's like it's coming out of the mystical here. Now, if I want this one, okay, watch the trick. So I'm going to click here, hold shift, and click there. And you see, that's what I was getting when I was trying to do the other ones. I was getting the outside, so I have to really get a smaller brush. I was getting outside the tree. Okay. Like so. Yeah, so then I have to really sort of like that, right? So that's kind of neat. So you can really do some neat things with this. And if we copy it, right, we can apply it again. So motion blur, 190, paste in our mask. Okay, so we're creating something really cool. Okay. Do you like the blur? I don't know. What do you think? Do you like the blur, Stephanie? It's a different look, right? And it makes something, it definitely has the golden light, right? It's kind of amazing. Okay, cool. I love this effect. And it's something that, people do that they do it in camera, right? But you can't say, well, I want this tree sharp and I want to blur the other one when you're doing motion, right? And if we want to add a little bit more sharpness, right? So I could just go, well, I want a little bit of trees around them like this, like that. So I can just do like this. So we get a little bit more of the forest. Like this. And now, I don't know. I haven't decided. Do we like that? Do we want less forest? I'm not sure. I'm not sure I like the non-blurriness. Then we could also make sure the tops are blurred, right? Something like that. And the bottom. We'll blur the bottom, we'll blur the top. Okay, so then I change the mask, make sure that I copy this one so that I can do the same on this one. Right, so it's totally up to you, right? Again, if we want to intensify it, right? And I didn't even put a LUT on here. We could even go crazy with a golden LUT, right? So the mood tool, let's see. I know that some of the Land of Freedom has some nice orange ones. Usually what I do is I turn the amount up so that I can see it better. Land of Freedom has some really nice warm LUTs. That one's kind of nice and gold. And some Odessa's is a little bit more orange. Ooh, that's nice. There we go. Okay. And then again, if we duplicate the layer, I'm giving you guys lots of tricks today. Okay, duplicate the layer. and multiply, we can intensify the color and the contrast. Okay, so we've gone from that to that. Pretty cool. I don't think we need this layer though. Might add another vignette on here just to darken this edge a little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing as I did in Lightroom. Feather down, amount down so I can see where it's going. Let's go a little rounder, about like that. There we go. Back to Lightroom. So Stephanie says, that's kind of amazing. So for your first time here, Trent Man, what did you think? Did you pick up some good tips? I love the orange gold. Absolutely. Me too. Thank you, Lee. Oh, yeah, it kind of does, doesn't it? Through a looking glass, right? So once again, let's do the before and after. This will be a dramatic transformation, right? So if I make a virtual copy, where's my edits? Develop, reset. Let's see if I can get these in the other order this time. There. Okay, so now, there we go. So beginning on the upper left, Lightroom, upper right, and then after being funked up in Luminar Neo. I like it. Original, Lightroom, Neo. And the crop that I did, right, we might not have to do after the blur, right? So in hindsight, might have been better without the crop. Awesome. Currently taking my Lightroom, my Luminar course. And just as a side note, funked up. Yeah, it was funked up. I got to be careful with how I say that, right? Just as a side note for everybody that is taking the Luminar course, there will be some changes to the Luminar course, and we've promised that the updates will be coming. But Skyline has said that they're still making more changes because we've had the logo change. It now has that gold star that everybody thinks looks like Walmart. That aside, it is what it is. My hair is going crazy. We're going to wait because they've told us that there are more changes coming potentially to the interface. So I don't want to make the new lessons for the video for the class until those changes have been done, because I don't want the new lessons to be obsolete and outdated before I even post them. Right. So just make note that there is new lessons coming. And Rob is reminding me we need to pick a theme. Okay, so themes has been suggested. Gardens, we've done gardens. People, baby animals, abstract, water drops, kids sports. Why don't we do people? Because we haven't done people in a while. And I've got lots of images that I can fill in. So let's do people for next week. And I kind of did a couple abstracts today, so I don't know if we want to do abstracts again. Any other thoughts? Baby animals is pretty specific. Thanks, Danelle, for understanding that. Yeah, I don't want to waste my time either making lessons that are not going to be applicable in 3 months. Vegetables. We're kind of in spring. We did flowers recently. What was our last few lives, Rob? Let me just have a look at our list of what we've done recently so we don't duplicate things. We've done a lot of ones again and again. So let's try something different. We did travel. We've done pets recently. So that was animals. We did street. We did flowers. We did car. We did mountains. We did restoration. We did night. We did using layers. We did fixing under overexposure. We did landscape. We did black and white. We did color. We could certainly revisit black and white. And people we haven't done in like 6 months. So let's do people for sure. And we could certainly We did water a while back, but let's revisit water as well because with the new tools in Luminar, I think water is going to be completely different. So the other thing that I wanted to mention is that we do have some photo tours coming up. We have Morocco that is coming in September. If you could put my share screen back on, Rob. We have Morocco coming back. Thank you. And we need to fill this one. We need a few more spots to make this one happen. So if you're interested in coming to Morocco with me, it is a really exotic and fascinating place. That is coming up in September. And if we don't fill it or we don't get enough by the end of this month, that one is going to be canceled or postponed till 2025. Then we have Cuba in January of 2025, and we only have 4 spots left for that one. And then Japan, we only have 2 spots left, and that is next spring. So end of March, April, you can get all the information here. I'm just going to pop this into the chat for you all. You can get the information on this one. So this website is run by my partner, Dan. He handles all the bookings and I am leading those tours. Japan, you get both of us. So we only have room for either one single person or 2 as a couple registered together for Japan. So check those out and check out some of the travel links for travel photography edits that I've done recently in the live stream to give you some ideas and inspiration on travel photos as well. So I am going to sign off with that for this week and say, join us again next week. Next week, let me see. I need to check my schedule here. I need to leave early next week, so we're not going to go more than an hour. So send in your people photos for next week, and we'll pick the topic. I'm going to pick the following topic. We'll do water the week after that, and we may have a different time for that one. Let me just check. Nope, that one is good. So people next week, water the following week. Send in your images. Rob, if you could please share a link for the submission page again, Digital Photo Mentor /live. I can bring that up right now, actually. And this is the page that you will see. And it will explain to you how to submit your images and what happens when you do so. So there's the link to submit. Rob got it as well. Thanks for joining us at the new Wednesday time. See you again next week for people, and go Oilers.